Brink here, brinkzone.com, and a topic I want to cover today is drugs in sports, or drug testing in sports. This, of course, is a very controversial topic. I've actually had an idea regarding this topic for many years. I proposed it in one of the magazines I wrote for back in the day, pre-internet in fact. Back in that time, this was before political correctness sort of took over, and you could still have a fairly open and honest discussion on such things about drugs in sports and all that. But first we had to set a couple of ground rules so we're all on the same page. I mean, back in the day when we talked about drug use, of course, really we were talking about anabolic steroids. But that has converted into really performance-enhancing drugs, PEDs, because now there's so much more than anabolic steroids, and so we really just have to cover the entire gambit and just call it PEDs or PEDs or whatever. So it's not really a discussion about anabolic steroids so much anymore. But this concept I've had for a long time, and it's very simple, and it is one way that we would be able to pretty much eliminate drug testing. It presents a couple of problems, but like anything, if you solve a problem, a bigger problem, and you end up with a smaller problem, you're still ahead of the game. So what am I getting at here? For one thing, again, let's set the ground rules. In any major sport that we're talking about, drug use is very common. If not the norm, depending on the sport, it can range from literally 100% to a smaller number depending on the sport, depending on how much performance gain is had by using PEDs. Now, I don't know about badminton or curling or something. I suspect in those particular sports, drug use is literally non-existent, but I don't know. I don't deal with badminton players. But in the major sports that we all know about, drug use is common. And so is drug testing. What does this tell us? It tells us, of course, that people using drugs are usually advised by other people who are 10 steps ahead of drug testing. Always have been and likely always will be, and it's only getting worse. That is, those people who know how to help other people pass drug tests are only getting better at it, and there are certain drugs coming along essentially are non-detectable. If gene doping comes along, which is probably not far away, it's kind of game over. So again, most of what people understand or what they've been fed via the media is just bullshit. Sorry, I was looking for a good technical term there, but you know what? That was the best term to really explain what goes on out there. That is, most drug testing is a farce to make the public and other people feel better. And there's sort of an inside joke that, you know, whoever actually gets caught is, you know, it's sort of a joke, or they don't know what they're doing, or they're not advised by the right person or whatever, and so forth. So with that in mind, let's go forward with my basic idea I've had. So why do we drug test? And the next thing we got to talk about, well, I mean, we drug test for two essential reasons, at least two essential reasons that are claimed. One, obviously, the health of the athletes. We do it for their own good, in theory, quote unquote, I should put that in quotes, for their own good. Because, of course, we care about their health, and it's supposed to be, you know, sports are supposed to be a healthy endeavor, right? And the second reason is it's supposed to create a level playing field, that is, allow people that are not using drugs to compete against those who are trying to use drugs and are being tested and stopped from using drugs, i.e. it's supposed to be morally and ethically righteous and creates a level playing field. Now, I really can't address that particular issue in this video. That's a different issue. I'm going to address the health issue, because the basis of this, in theory, again, is, you know, using drugs, PEDs, we're PEDs, negative for health, we care about their health, so we test, and so forth. So, as I've explained, drug use is very common, if not the norm, in the vast majority of the major sports we know about, depending, again, on the position, depending on how much the PED will help, and so forth. But if we care about their health, and that's the main issue, why don't we test their health? Why don't we come up with a health test? It is very difficult to fake good health. Now, we already have all of these tests. It would be very easy to do, to initiate, and again, you would check all the usual parameters or metrics that we know of health. We would test, obviously, usual stuff: blood lipids, cholesterol, blood pressure, kidney function, liver function, immune function, so on. I mean, there's a whole gambit of tests we could put together to test whether these people are indeed in good health. if that is the main issue, or at least one of the main issues, that's what we care about. Now, you couldn't fake this test. There's no faking good health. In fact, you'd probably get rid of most of the people that were having them pass drug tests, because we wouldn't be testing them for drugs anymore. You'd have health coaches. You'd have coaches that were making sure these people were healthy enough to pass the test. And then we don't really care whether they're using drugs or they're not, because they're healthy. Now, this will never happen. Why? Because it exposes a couple of key problems. One key problem is it would expose the fact that, yes, some athletes can use drugs and be healthy. It would also expose the fact that some people not using drugs are not healthy. It would, of course, challenge some of our, let's say, the more uninformed misconceptions necessarily about drug use. Now, I'm not a proponent of it one way or the other, but I am a proponent of elimination of the hypocrisy of the whole thing. I say, if we're going to claim the reason we're doing this is for their own good and for their health, then why don't we check health? Now, another problem that this would expose, and the reason it would never be done, is that for a lot of people, competitive high-level sports is not healthy. These are not healthy people, regardless of drug use or not drug use. Some of them are very unhealthy people. They have pushing their body to extremes, and that is the nature of very high-level competitive sports. And a lot of times they're not the healthiest people. Their immune systems can be all screwed up. They can have high blood pressure, or they can have screwed up lipids, or whatever you'd be testing for. So doing that, literally having a health test that they would have to pass, and if you pass the test, you go compete. If you don't pass the test, you can't compete. I consider this a surprisingly simple answer to at least that one aspect of drugs in sports. The other issue we'd have to address. But I mean, again, from just to shortly cover the level playing field, the hypocrisy, what have you, I mean, I think one big reason, of course, that younger people and society and stuff sort of yawns at the whole drug testing thing is I was at many years ago, I was at a conference at the NIH on drugs in sports, drugs use in sports, and there were a number of speakers, and this one particular doctor who, for reasons I don't really understand, but he's kind of situated himself as a drugs and sports expert. He has no particular background in this. I think he was a pediatrician or a GP or something, but anyway, he decided years ago to situate himself as sort of a expert on drugs and sports and stuff. And he did his little talk, and it was complete and utter nonsense. And he was about, I would say at the time, I don't know about now, this is a long time, but he was probably 40, 50 pounds overweight. I saw him after the talk, I saw him in the commissary with some other people eating. His choice of food was horrendously bad. And then as I left, I saw him outside with somebody else smoking a cigarette. I have no respect for the person. His viewpoints on what other people do who are active and athletes and using drugs are frankly of no value, I think. And I think such people, as himself, show that level of hypocrisy out there. And we could go on and on from a position of hypocrisy, and again, that's another video, but to touch on that, I think that is one of the key problems that we have, convincing people that maybe using PEDs is not the best idea. So that's a very simple concept I've had for a long time. And I wrote a whole article about it. We call it the health test, or the health metric, or whatever you want. And if you can pass it, you compete. If you can't pass it, you don't compete. And again, it would expose a couple of key problems that we sort of 800-pound gorilla, or the elephant in the room, that we ignore, and therefore will never be done. But at least it would be it would account for one of the two supposed main reasons that we drug test. And if you like that, sub up. You can leave some comments. I'm sure I'll get some real controversial comments when I go into this type of stuff. And see you all on the Brink Zone.